Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Cindy Abbott, Executive Director of Sanchez Art Center. And on behalf of the SAC board and staff, I'd like to share how delighted we are to have you with us this afternoon and extend our wishes for good health and harmony for you and our planet on this Earth Day weekend. And I'd like to share my personal appreciation to our Sanchez Art Center Artistic Director, Jerry Ross Barish. Jerry has once again brought an outstanding juror to us for the 2023 Left Coast Annual. From everyone at SAC and for all of the 2023 Left Coast Annual artists, we share our great appreciation for Renee Cyla Villasenor's time during the show. There were over 900 entries, and Renee took great care to review all of the works and make the difficult decisions to create a powerful show of about 50 pieces. Before hearing from Jerry and Renee, I'd like to review how the program is going to flow this afternoon. We'll be viewing the works in the 2023 Left Coast Annual in our Sanchez Art Center virtual galleries. And we'll stroll through the virtual gallery in reverse alphabetical order by artist last name. Each 2023 artist will have about 2 minutes to speak about their work, and Renee may also share some remarks about the pieces. Depending on how your screen is configured, and we're all much better at Zoom than we used to be, but if you know where the chat box is, we ask that the artist and juror review the chat box and respond to any questions that are directed at them during their talk. And so for participants here on the call, find where the chat box is. And if you have a question or a comment, feel free to use that chat box to ask a question. We recognize everyone's time is valuable, and as time permits, we'll take a few additional questions at the end of the program that we anticipate will be no more than an hour and a half. If you'd like to revisit the virtual gallery later, the URL is sanchezartcentervirtualgalleries.org. Again, sanchezartcentervirtualgalleries.org. There's a link to the virtual gallery on our regular SAC website, which is sanchezartcenter.org. And we'll share a recording of this call on our YouTube channel later this week. The show in the galleries runs through Sunday, May 21st. So if you haven't been here yet in person, we welcome you to visit the Art Center in Pacifica. Next weekend, Friday, April 28th through Sunday, April 30th, we're hosting a special fundraiser, Art by Nature by Art, with natural floral creations inspired by some of the works in the 2023 Left Coast Annual. This is a ticketed event with proceeds supporting our exhibition and community engagement programs, and tickets are available now on Eventbrite. After the special fundraising weekend, the galleries will be opened our regular hours at no charge, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 1 to 5 p.m., with extended hours May 6th and 7th, when we'll also be taking part in Silicon Valley Open Studios Coastside Weekend. So we're really excited to have all of these different programs going on during this year's Left Coast Annual. A few words about our juror, and then I'll have our artistic director, Jerry, welcome her as well, welcome them as well. Renee is born in the Philippines and raised in the high desert of Southern California. Renee is an arts worker and curator based in the San Francisco Bay Area, the Ramaytush Ohlone homelands, where Sanchez Art Center is also located. Villasenor's work is informed by their experience as a queer, undocumented immigrant and their love of affect theory. They're dedicated to dismantling white supremacy within arts institutions and expanding the boundaries of curatorial work through community-centered collaboration, intergenerational storytelling, and care. Renee is currently the inaugural program manager and curatorial associate at the Institute of Contemporary Art in San Francisco, and we look forward to hearing a bit about what's happening there. Prior to joining the ICASF, Villasenor was the assistant manager of public programs at the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco, as you know, the DeYoung and Legion of Honor. At this time, I'd like to welcome Jerry to welcome our juror.
I know I want to get the thing on there.
Hi, Jerry, we can hear you.
Yeah, but I can't get my video on here.
Yeah, we're not doing video.
Okay, well, all right. First of all, I'm Jurid. I'm the artistic director at the Art Center in Pacifica. I've been artistic director for 20 years. And one of my jobs is to find a prestigious juror to handle one of our great shows every year, the Left Coast Annual. Despite all the negative publicity in the New York Times about what's happening in the art world in San Francisco, I totally disagree with that article. The city of San Francisco is really booming artistically. We have an art fair in San Francisco that was packed for 3 or 4 days. And also at the same time, one of the things that happened in the last year is the ICA came to San Francisco and built a beautiful artist hall for exhibitions in San Francisco. And this has been a real plus for our community. And I thought upon them building this new facility, I thought this would be a really good opportunity that I would contact them about getting Renee to be a juror for our show here and let the world know that the ICA is in San Francisco. As you already heard, we had over 900 entries. That doesn't sound like an artistic void to me. And at this time, I really want to thank Renee for her labor of love and passion during this show. It's a spectacular show, and I'm looking forward to hear what the artists have to say. Thank you so much, and welcome to Pacifica Arts Center.
Thank you, Jerry and Cindy, for the kind welcome words. And thank you to all the artists who applied, as well as the artists who are joining us today for the Artist Talk. As Jerry and Cindy said, my name is Renee Villasenor. I'm the Programs Manager and Curatorial Associate at the ICA San Francisco. We are a brand new museum. We've just been open 6 months. We're a free contemporary non-collecting space. We're a mid-sized museum located in the Dog Patch. And so it's been great to add to the ecosystem of the Bay Area, because it was really important for our team to have this new space where artists can try very crazy experimental things, from local artists to creating new works on a museum scale to well-established artists trying new things in their practice. It's been really exciting here. And I was really excited to juror the Left Coast Annual show. As Jerry and Cindy said, the ICA is new, and we're super excited that this summer we're launching a new program series called Meantime, which will be a call for applications for artist residencies, as well as pop-up performances and takeovers of this space. So that'll be all through July and August. And so you can apply to that at icasf.org/programs. I'll drop it in the chat right here. So icasf.org/programs, the application window closes at the end of May, and the only requirement is that you have to be a Bay Area artist, and it's if you're chosen, your program is paid for, you get a stipend as well as the artist residency. So I hope that all of you that are in the Bay Area that join the Left Coast Annual apply, and I'm looking forward to seeing applications. But if you have any questions, we're free. In the Bay Area, we're open Wednesday to Sunday. We just closed our first exhibition with the amazing artist Jeffrey Gibson, but we have 2 shows that are currently up that close in June. One with Bay Area artists Liz Hernandez and Ryan Whelan, and another one curated by Bay Area artist and activist Tahira Rashid and Autumn Brion. So visit us at icsf.org, and I'm super excited to hear from the artists today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Renee. And as Jerry said, thank you for putting together such an exciting show, the different mediums, the variety of work and subjects and themes are so important. And we're just really thrilled to have all of these pieces here. I'd like to bring up now Andrew Wharton. He has 2 pieces in the show. Here's the first one, and Andrew.
Hi, everyone. So the focus of my practice is on the intersection of organic and intelligence-directed systems. These 2 pieces in the show specifically came about from thinking about how we use computer simulations of the natural world to better control and manipulate the environment. So on a formal basis, these 2 pieces are made from GIS data, which is a 3D topographical map of an area. So I sampled the GIS data from 2 points along the Santa Ynez mountain range. One was just north of where I was living at the time, and the other one is Vandenberg Space Force Base. So then I have these nice organic shapes that are the models of the mountain ranges of my computer, and I reflected them over themselves in order to apply the logic of the grid and symmetry, which stand out to me as very mechanical and human ways of understanding things as ordered. And so the organic systems of the mountains then become standardized through this, and they develop into a 3D printable brick that allows for the construction of these towers. The tower in Babel specifically is based on the topography of Vandenberg Space Force Base, which is a site of departure from the Earth. So this tower could be arbitrarily tall because I can print as many bricks as I need. So there's this gesture at the idea of leaving the Earth and of infinite expansion into space and of capital that's sort of posited by space travel. But at the same time, as more bricks are added to this tower, it becomes more unsteady and it becomes more vulnerable to collapse. And I wanted to make an object that sort of visualizes that complex technological stack that's necessary to allow things like satellites or space travel to exist, while at the same time showing how fragile and vulnerable that system really is.
Thank you so much. And we understand now a little bit of the intricacies of installing the Space Force Vandenberg piece that did seem like it was really stretching itself out there. This piece by Lek Borja, she's unable to be here, but she asked me if we would read a little bit about her work while she is engaged in moving. Lek immigrated from the Philippines to the US with her family at age of 10. She's moved through the world many times feeling displaced. And in some ways, she uses art to return to these moments of displacement, to understand them and shape herself as a person. Her mixed media's works explore the personal and social impacts of Spanish colonization and American imperialism on the Filipino experience. Lek notes that she weaves the history with personal experience to draw broader contemporary Filipino-American stories of identity, displacement, trauma, survival, resilience, and belonging. This piece was made using strategies that are typical of their practice: collaging, combining organic and inorganic materials, and pushing the work to be in between the domains of painting and sculpture. Lek notes that her work is a bridge to her experiences. In collaging, expresses her hybrid identity. Organic and inorganic materials allude to the different cultures that they were raised in, and occupying 2 different genres speaks to her persistent feeling of being in between 2 cultures or not belonging. As we have works that artists are not with us, we'll simply be scrolling through them so that everyone can see the variety and depths of what is in the show. And again, you can come back to these pieces in the virtual gallery or in person here at Sanchez Art Center. And here we are with Shelby, artist name Bad Talent.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. As Cindy mentioned, my name is Shelby Alexander, but my artist name is Bad Talents. This piece specifically is called Love Me Not. And it's a mixed media piece. My work in general, it looks a bit different in person than it does digitally because it is mixed media and there's some dimension in there that you can't quite see in the photo. But in essence, I draw figures using graphite on watercolor paper. And I use this kind of illustrative style for the hair and the clothing, but try to achieve more of a realism with the figure. And then I cut them out and float mount them onto a background of textiles. And I specifically use vintage textiles, secondhand textiles, clothes from my own closet. I upcycle any type of material like fabric that I can get to create these kind of abstract backgrounds behind the figures. And I do so in an effort to explore, in my mind, the kind of contradictory nature within the fast fashion industry in terms of the pollution of the planet. And so I just try to kind of reconcile that through my artwork, my love of fashion as an art form and the kind of ecological impact that it's having on the world.
Thank you so much. We have Deborah next.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Renee, and everyone from the Sanchez Art Center. So actually, do you mind if I talk about the other piece first? Great. So these two pieces are part of a project that I started when I was living in Spain for an art residency, and because my husband was on a sabbatical there. And it happened to be, we happened to move in January 2020. When the pandemic, was just starting and got sort of stuck there. But so this first piece is one of a group of work within the project that tries to dismantle some of the very biased history that I had been taught about what happened when the Europeans encountered the Americans, the Native Americans. And so during the pandemic, I found myself like really diving deep and trying to understand the history, which I was never really taught. And personally, sort of spending a lot of time assimilating. And my late mother was from Mexico, I should say, assimilating and just trying to fit in. So this work is specifically about the diseases that the people of the New World encountered by the European. It's purposefully arranged in a sort of Rorschach blob to kind of signify that my ancestry is both includes both this sort of conqueror and the conquered, and wrestling with that. And then later works, including the next piece, are one of several portals where I try to, I'm sort of more reconciled with the fact, what kind of happened, radical acceptance, and what ideas from Native American peoples can I try to bring forward and reincorporate into my life. And so this work is sort of a combination of ideas that are found throughout a lot of Native American worldviews, including, balancing natural resources and elements of the natural world, and including ourselves as part of the natural world, which is pretty fundamental to the way I think. But the other thing I should say about this work is that it was created digitally, layering on the computer, and that was sort of a new thing for me because I was abroad and sort of stuck, and this sort of new format came out for me that I did some handwork after. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Deborah. Both just amazing prints and wonderful online virtually, and so much better in person. Ruth, who has a series of assemblages here, isn't able to join us today. Alan, you are next. And if you'd like to note too, where your art studio is located, while this show is open to all of the left coast states, it became a very Bay Area centric show. So, but Alan, you're our one out of state individual this year, and this piece also won the Jurors Award of Merit.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm based in Portland, Oregon. A lot of my practice is about examining our relationship with technology. So I'm a bit of a hacker. I take, common pieces of tech that we use every day, and I try to subvert them in some way that is either satirical or yeah, I'd say it's mostly satirical. This piece, Talking Head, is about the feedback loop between traditional news media and social media. I started to notice that sometime around 2010, social media started to supplant traditional television news. And I started to notice that a lot of news outlets were using social media as a place to mine stories from, sometimes without verification. And then obviously everyone is probably aware by now of like all these social media, people get into arguments about the news, et cetera, et cetera. This piece, Talking Head, is these two chatbots that listen for tweets in real time. Usually this piece is connected to the internet, but it runs offline. But it listens to tweets in real time, and then breaks down the topics that people are tweeting about. And then these two chatbots, they argue with each other about those topics. And it just goes on and on forever in a fake news television program. Anything else? Yeah, that's what it is. This piece is interactive, so it's hard to convey sometimes in just like a still image, but when you actually interact with it, then I guess that's when it really comes across.
And I'm sorry I can't show it live. It is very intriguing, and it's been playing continuously in the gallery with these two heads bantering with each other since the show opened.
Thank you.
Teddy was unable to be here today. And same for Liz with this amazing ceramic and glass piece. And we now have Carol Larson.
Hi there. After the recorded murder of George Floyd calling out for his mama, I researched Black lives taken at the hands of police. Over 4,700 names of African Americans who died of gunshots or asphyxiation in police encounters in the past 20 years were digitally printed to silk organza and then layered. Each one was somebody's child. All of these folks had mamas. I gathered the information from an online open source spreadsheet that was compiled by Brian Burgard, who is a former newspaper editor in the Sacramento area. He and others had recorded to the database the names and circumstances of over 28,000 people who had fatal encounters with police just in this century. He also had verified each death. The database is a wealth of information and tragedy. From the spreadsheet, I culled the name, state, and cause of death of over 4,700 African Americans who died of gunshots or asphyxiation in police encounters. So this piece does have all 4,700 names on it. I digitally printed it on silk organza on a wide format printer, and then I fused the layers together and machine stitched it and then hand stitched the tiers.
I know I've had to keep taking pause when you mention the current century, and I think of that still as being the last century in 100 years. So this is so powerful just in the past 2 decades. Thank you. And again, if anybody would like to ask any questions of the artist, please use the chat to do that. We now have Carol Landwick.
Hi. My work is about time, and I've been chronicling various ways we track time. The first one I did was a large-scale piece in 2011, and everything up until 2020 was in a linear mode. The first year was just a color a day, so there are little panels, 6 inches squares in a grid, because the grid is one of the organizing ways in which we do, as previous artists said, organize things. And as I've been sort of investigating and looking at time, I have come to sort of a conclusion that time doesn't, in one sense, doesn't exist, and that what we've done as humans is organize it in ways so that we can meet up at 1 o'clock. And my favorite factoid in doing this was recently reading that time, we've always kept time in one way or another, and we use sundials, but each town would have their sundial. And the 12-hour day was something that they used, and that was sunrise to sunset. So in winter, there was a 12-hour day, and in summer, there was a 12-hour day. But the length of the days were different because an hour was longer in summer and shorter in winter. And that to me was just sort of encapsulated the fact that our construction is based on somewhat on science, but a lot on how we can organize ourselves. So with COVID, which started in 2020, time for me became completely nonlinear. I don't know how others have experienced it, but it was time, which I think we usually do anyway, but it was a layered experience. Days melded into one another and not distinct from one another. And so I was invited to do a show, and the curator, instead of doing the pillars that normally you would do, asked me to do something with my circles, squares, and triangles, which had composed the last really large piece I did, chronicling time using the seasons. And if it were stretched out, it's 42 feet not being stretched out. So it would be quite a bit longer than that, but it's conceptually built so that it would be in one long line. I created these armatures, and then Michael Mays, a sculptor and metal worker, I'd made a drawing, and then he went and made the armatures for me. And then I put the pieces on non-sequentially. They encapsulate like a time, a specific period. I think this is fall. This one is, I get these two confused. There's one that's fall and one that's the beginning of winter, 2022. So each one of these encapsulates like a week, maybe 2 weeks, but the pieces are put on non-sequentially. They're put on in how I felt about the day. And unlike the previous work, which was all completely abstract, I've incorporated drawing and images along with abstract pieces, which are both my love. I love both of those processes and ways of working. Yeah, this is winter. So that's what these are. They're all facts of sort of either from my studio images or memories, but those layered things that occur to us in time. So this is the new direction of the investigation, I would say, of time and how we perceive it and experience it.
Thank you for sharing your reshuffling of time and seasons. It's been very interesting to spend time with these. Isabella King.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much to everyone from the Sanchez Art Gallery our art center. Yeah, so these pieces also started during late pandemic. I started out as a painter, and I felt like something was missing in my practice. I really wanted that relationship to material, and I really loved the way that material of a piece informs the meaning. And I think there's this whole wealth of possibilities when you can reuse materials that were once something else and draw upon all of those cultural associations and assumptions about who owned them and how they were used. So these are all the 2 cones that are included in the exhibition are soft sculptures made of reclaimed textiles, predominantly from clothing. And I started out using clothing from my own wardrobe. But as the project has progressed, I've been getting things from the other sources as well. There's also some home decor fabrics in there as well, from cushions, pillows, other things like that, tablecloths. And as I was making this work, the idea of the traffic cone became really important to this piece because traffic cones, I think, are really interesting symbols about who has the right to manipulate public space and how our bodies move through public space. They're supposed to signal to us to pay attention, to that there's danger nearby, but they are also really ubiquitous and just strewn about in really absurd locations if you start to pay attention to where they are. And so I thought that these were really interesting objects to recreate in textile form, because I think when you recreate them using this quilting and this soft sculpture, you really undermine the original message of the traffic cone and get people to question why it is they're listening to this thing that's telling them how to move through space and who owns that space. So it's been a really great journey, and I'm working on about 12 more of these to go in a larger show. I'm really thankful to have them at Sanchez Art Center.
And I can't be out on the street anymore because there's so many of these out after the current storms and things. So I've been thinking about you a lot, even on my way to and from the center.
Yeah, it's really, once you start seeing them, you cannot unsee them. They're everywhere.
That is true. Thank you so much. Barbara Kibbe.
Good afternoon. I'm a printmaker, an art quilter, and a painter. And lately I've been reflecting on why I can't settle down. And I think because my inspiration comes very much from courage, personal courage or collective courage. When I look at my past work, I see evidence of me trying to honor courage in different forms, and the materials need to go along with the theme or the emotion or the memory. This particular piece is an ode to voices lifted in song. Each of these silhouettes is singing, and I tried to envision the emanation of sound from the figures. I'm going to try to, yes, all right. In the chat, I'm putting my artist statement, so you can read that if you're interested. And I'll spend the brief time I have talking about the technique. One of the things I know from being around the girls' chorus when my daughter was growing up and singing with it is that there is nothing more different about us than our voice. It's as distinct as our fingerprint. And yet when voices are lifted together, it's all about the blend. So I tried to create a palette where there was room for distinction and also cohesion. Each of the singing silhouettes is first layer on cotton, is a screen printed backdrop in silver, gold, or copper. The idea there is that I was trying to display something precious, the precious metal colors. The next layer is stitched symbol of the emanation of sound, the sound of the singing. And that is either printed or painted or embroidered fabric of different kinds. And I have a lot of memories embedded in this piece. I can tell you which part is a little address of my daughter's, which part was part of some pillowcase that I made years ago, or there's all kinds of memories in here. Each block is at least 3 or 4 layers. The screened panel, the embroidered sound, the silhouette, in some cases, additional screen printing, and then of course the embroidery to hold it all together. And it's fairly typical of the work I do when I work in fiber, that there are always printed elements as well as stitched elements.
Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Very uplifting piece. Thank you. Ken.
Oh, hello.
And again, if
So-
you want to say where your studio is that you work from.
My studio is in Emeryville. And I also have a foundry I built at my home. So this piece, I had the idea for this piece long before I made it, because things had to catch up with me in terms of how to convey the before and the after. And I explored puzzles to do this. I have a large map collection, and I put it all together. And this is the piece that came from that, to talk about this genocide that occurred in our country. I want it to be an educational tool and interactive for people to use. Like you learn it's, like the puzzle is a tool that can be used to do that with. I do a lot of other kinds of work, but this was a piece in the Sanchez Center. Does anybody have any questions about this piece? No. Okay. Well, thank you.
I'll note that since this is one of 3 pieces that attendees are invited to touch and to learn from, as Ken has just noted, it has been actively explored. So great way to use art as a tool to educate. And it looks like there's a question in there that they didn't realize that the drawer could be opened. And if there was anything to be kept in there that's more like a desk. So Ken, that was a question for you in chat. And so I'm seeing that the pieces can be stored in there when they're not out on the table. It's very intriguing. I hope, folks, if you haven't been in, that you can come and explore the piece. Uma, who is, I think, in London.
Yes, I'm here in London. I'm glad I had the opportunity to be here and go check out some the museums and some exhibitions out here. Hello, everyone again. My name is Uma Rani Aili. I'm a San Francisco Bay Area artist. I work from my studio at Dog Patch Collective and also from my home studio in Portola Valley. I work with multiple mediums: paintings, fiber, photography, installation art, mixed media. Some major themes for my work are identity, the domestic, and women's work. I incorporate materials from the domestic realm and upcycling them and elevating them. Many times I use leftover fibers from my own work process into my artwork. all my work involves some kind of meditative processes, repetitive mark making, wrapping, stitching, weaving. My work is in part inspiration and in part an urge to do this kind of work. The artwork included in this exhibition is titled Winding and Unwinding 13. It's made by wrapping repurposed leftover silk fibers that are gathered directly from the weavers in India. I hand wrap them and hand wrap them onto plexi tubes, and I arrange them into patterns reflecting the essence of a sari. I grew up in India where we have castes and subcastes, and I identify myself to belong to the weavers community. And growing up in India, I heard very many stories from my parents about my great-grandfather, who was the handloom president of India for many years during his time. So my work pays homage to my Indian roots, and I also see this work as a collaboration with my ancestors and the weavers community and elevating their crafts.
This piece in person is so vibrant. So again, I hope if folks haven't seen the show that you come in and are able to see it in person with the lighting on it, because the colors, it just glows from inside. And this piece was awarded one of the 2 exhibition awards. So next year we look forward to seeing a broader selection of works by Uma in the East Gallery.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited about it. Looking forward to pushing the work further in terms of scale, media, concept, and see what results.
Yes, we are too. And by the way, congratulations to Ken as well for the table piece, which won one of the 2 awards of merit.
Oh, thank you.
Emily Holland.
Hello, I'm Emily from Daly City. Normally, I do art inspired by nature and science fiction, but I'm also a gamer and a speedrunner. Speedrunning is when we play video games as fast as we can, usually by doing things the developers didn't intend. One of those things we do is perform glitches, and they can have interesting graphical effects like this. So to make this image, I performed a glitch and explored the world in that state, took some screenshots and zoomed in and found some parts of it that I thought would look interesting blown up on a big panel, and then recreated it in acrylic paint by hand. So when I started making this series, it was originally just about being fascinated by the patterns and wanting to work with bright colors and straight lines, which isn't something I normally do. But that was around November of last year. And there have been some pretty big developments in technology since then. And one of the big ones that is beginning to impact artists is the advent of AI text-to-image generators. And if you don't know what those are programs that scrape the internet and other sources and then go through this whole process of creating new images out of the huge data sets that can really, really impressively mimic human-made art. If you have never seen anything made by Midjourney, you should look it up and see what it's capable of, because it's not only very impressive, but it's also a threat to artists. So when I make these, now I think about how I'm taking something that was created by a machine by accident and creating it with simple tools and physical media, and how that's sort of process is really the only way that we can ensure that we keep the humanity in art. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. That's really important, isn't it? That's the excitement about art, is having that human expression. Denver wasn't able to join us today. 2 cyanotypes. Dallas.
Greetings, everyone. I want to thank Renee and everyone at the Sanchez Art Center for this opportunity. I feel so honored. I am primarily a fiber artist, but I do get into some mixed media pieces. The foundation of my work is to be eco-friendly. I repurpose and reuse items that would normally be tossed into the trash and into our landfills. So I'm, trying my part to limit what goes there and create things that are attractive, beautiful, soothing, and so forth. Part of my practice is dealing with pieces that address our social issues, the social injustice, health disparities, all these kinds of things, the bigotry and hatred that is creeping up and beginning to surround us. So because that can become so heavy, I have to allow myself the fun and the relaxing, sometimes whimsical pieces that can kind of balance out the frustration and anger that I feel, that's surrounding us. And this is one of those pieces. My husband and I, go for walks on the beach and, walks in parks and other places. So this is a response to that California sunset, where I did wrappings of, I used cardboard tools, straws, and used other kind of beads and things. I basically paint with my fibers. So this, and I really wish you could see just all the way around it. And that's the trouble with sculptures. You only get one view of it. And because this type of totem is so big, you can't see the details in it unless you're there in person, or if you can zoom in and see all the little surprises that are waiting for you in the piece as you look around it. I don't want to go over my 2 minutes. So if there are any questions, you can put it in the chat or in the Q&A, and I'd be happy to answer them. But this is just a reflection of some of the amazing sunsets that we get on our coast, all up and down the coast of California. I'm from Southern California. My son lives up in Northern California, so I have a connection up there. So I was doubly glad to be able to come up and present my artwork to the Sanchez Art Center. Thank you very much.
We were so happy you could come up, and I will let you know that folks have been peeking all around on your
oh, good.
and all over. So it is wonderful for folks to be able to explore it in person.
Great. Thank you.
Marian.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So my background is in painting, but I started using photography during the beginning of the pandemic, when I lived with my daughter in a remote house in the Alexander Valley. I was photographing the nature around me and how it had been affected by a devastating wildfire several years before. At the same time, I was reading about the history of photography and how it has been used to categorize human beings and to create myths. I was interested in how it has represented American history and how it has been used to uphold white supremacy. So at the beginning of, this is part of a project that I call Black River. At the beginning of photographing this project, my biracial daughter was 11 years old, and she was wondering about identity and belonging. The wig in this particular image is one that she wanted desperately when she was 3 years old, and very unhappy about her brown, kinky, curly hair. So we played with photography and took pictures. I photographed and we played around with it. Some of them, I would call them documentary, but some of them are also constructed, like this one here. I would say that my images are meant to be beautiful, but also unsettling and uncomfortable at the same time. And I'd say that ideally, I would like to see them in an installation and in a space. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Anyone has any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Marianne. Beautiful lighting, I'll share, as a moving story, but also your lighting on this piece is spectacular.
Thank you.
T.
Hello, everyone. I'm very thankful to be here, and this is my piece, Shiro. It was an inspired moment where I was going through my degree and getting an education, and I volunteered with the educational partnership. I also at the time wanted to research Filipino women whose history had been swept under the rug. I came across Nice Fernandez, who was a teacher around the Visayan area. She was quite one of the women in World War II. She had went from becoming a teacher into becoming one of the many first women of the time to be a guerrilla leader. So she was actually known as the silent killer, building makeshift guns to using bolo knives and leading a group of 110. So using acrylic, I had used indigenous pieces and kind of distorted its image, and using the greenery as a representation that she was a guerrilla leader. Using her as a centerpiece, I thought adding the bread would be representative, like the many kills that she had. So I'm pretty sure there's like some things you can't see in this, but there are definitely a layering in this. And all right, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. She's very striking figure. How you worked in all the different backgrounds are really intriguing. Thank you. Tara Daly. And this piece, there's two here in this show. This piece here was also given one of the 2 exhibition awards.
Hi, everybody.
And tell us where you practice, but you're not there today. We know that.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, everyone. My studio is actually right below Uma's. So I'm also in the dog patch, but on the 2nd rather than the 3rd floor of the Tennessee Street building. So nice to see all your work and hear from you all. I've been at artist residencies in Colorado and currently in New Mexico. So I will be back in May and I can't wait to see this show. It looks really great. I have 2 pieces in the show and they're both woven works. I work off of improvised looms that I nail to the wall. And I work blind, which means that I start weaving and then end up sometimes having to undo undo hours of work. And then I work abstractly, and I like to title my work with quotes from thinkers and activists who inspire me. This piece is titled by one of my favorite people, Vandana Shiva, and the quote is, "No matter what the problem is, diversity is the answer." And the other piece in the show, I made this one before the last one, is titled by a degrowth thinker out of the UK, who's written some brilliant books. His name is Jason Hickel. And the quote is, "If economic growth can be a substitute for equality, then equality can be a substitute for economic growth." And I feel that both of these quotes reflect sort of a way to get towards balance, which is sorely needed in our post-Holocene time that we're living in now. And balance is something that I am striving for in my personal life, in the composition of my work, and in my behavior. And I think weaving does allow me to gain a practice trying to balance things a little bit. It's so ancient, and I use very contemporary materials, but it's such an ancient technology and practice that I feel like it connects me to something. So thank you. I feel like I'm just rambling on. I look forward to hearing from the next people.
Not rambling. Thank you for sharing about your work and your inspirations behind it. Deborah Corsini, who's over, I'm asking you to unmute. Hope that works. There we go.
Did it work? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Deborah.
Oh, good. Hi, everyone. I'm a local gal. I'm a Pacifica artist, and I'm very pleased to be in this exhibit. So thank you, Cindy, and thanks to everyone here. It's really fun to be participating. I'm a longtime artist and weaver and have been involved in many aspects of this field as a teacher, a textile designer, and a curator. My work is abstract and graphic, and I really love color and texture. And quite often, most often, the work develops and changes on the loom as I weave. My primary technique is tapestry, and for the last 20 years, I've been focusing on an eccentric weaving technique, wedge weave, which is also a Native American technique. And the weft or weaving yarns are woven at an angle to the warp, which are the lengthwise threads that are stretched on the loom. And so it creates this zigzag pattern, which I've really loved. It makes everything come alive. My preferred materials are usually natural fibers like wool, silk, cotton, and linen. But I have always experimented with unusual materials in combination with natural fibers. In the 1980s, the San Francisco Chronicle arrived in bright yellow plastic bags. These bags were too appealing to throw away, and I liked the contrast that the bright plastic covered up the somber news. I wove a few pieces back then by cutting the bags into strips to use as yarns. But at that time, I didn't like the feel of the plastic residue on my fingers, as it made them kind of smooth and silky. It's just a really odd sensation to weave with plastic. And I think that was from, the residue of like the material, the gases that the plastic is made from. But recently I was cleaning out my closet and I came across this vintage stash of bags over 30 years old. And I was inspired to create another piece. So downstream is this latest work that was provoked or inspired by the current themes of environmental destruction and climate change that are plaguing our global consciousness and reality that we live in. This is a yellow curtain or current of plastic that breaks down into smaller strips. It never goes away. And it's evident in things like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch that's just miles and miles of floating plastic in the sea. And if plastic is burned in the environment, it emits traces of methane and ethylene, two powerful greenhouse gases. So it's just, I'm just really upset about all of this plastic that's everywhere. And another thing that I used are the little beads at the end of the piece, or the spools from inside dental floss. I've been saving those for a few years. And it's another carelessly tossed thing. Plastic is everywhere. And single-use plastic just goes into the environment and becomes a part of the waste stream. And to me, it's just staggering. So beneath the shiny beauty of this piece, it alludes to the reality that we're all indeed downstream. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Wonderful Earth Day message. Taylor.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to Sanchez Art Center and Renee for having me. I am based a little farther down south in San Diego, and I live and work out of San Diego. I'm primarily a painter and working in oil on canvas mostly, and I'm particularly interested in kind of investigating the construction of value and how we perceive value in our kind of current day and age, specifically based around how it's manipulated by branding and advertising. And so my kind of approach to exploring that is through this idea of the cover-up, and I collect all sorts of various fabrics, and I collect various objects and consumer goods that have various connotations of value. And what I do to kind of ideally question or subvert that manufactured value is cover everything up in fabric. So I set up these still lifes in my studio with all of these various objects and cover them physically in fabric. And I have that as a reference for the final oil painting. And so it's kind of ends up as this additional facade where the kind of painting itself becomes this flattening of the created still life, which it kind of ideally is another layer to this facade of constructed value based around branding and advertising. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And this is really a fun piece in person to explore too. Megan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Broughton. I'm currently making my work at Graphic Arts Workshop in the Dog Patch in San Francisco. And I have 3 etchings in the show, all made in the image of a fjord in Svalbard, Norway. Svalbard is an island about halfway between the north of Norway and the North Pole, and I was there in June 2019 for an artist residency. And these are all from a series called Lillehookbreen, which is the name of the glacier that empties into the fjord I mentioned earlier. And when we were there, the glacier was calving quite a lot, so much so that the ship's crew and the Arctic guides that were with us were very surprised and pretty dismayed. And it was filling the fjord in front of it with bergy bits, which is a technical term, and brash ice. And brash ice is the last state of a melting iceberg, and it is formed when active water kind of breaks down ice into smaller pieces that then jostle against each other and form many, many smaller pieces and eventually melt away into the water. And it was a very sensorial experience. It actually creates a really beautiful noise that sounds sort of like tinkly TV static. and it was blanketing the water all around the ship. And it was a very kinetic experience. And so when I came home, I started to make experimental etchings after this residency, all about melting polar ice. This series is made with the sugar lift aquatint technique. That's a way of creating tone on a copper etching plate using painted on resist process. And some of them also incorporate handmade abaca paper made by my friend and artist, Anela Mingyu-O, who left her paper with me. And it's used to sort of emphasize this idea of a current within the water or movement, and definitely the idea of change and something transforming into something else. And the progress, or rather the project is in progress, but as with all work that I've made on this topic, the plates will eventually be destroyed by acid or the imagery otherwise obscured to speak to the themes I'm working with right now, which is loss and the climate crisis and melting polar ice. So if any of that was too fast or technical, I would love to invite more communication, and I'll drop my Instagram, Megan Broughton Artist, in the chat. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Megan, for these thoughtful pieces. Really important subject with the most recent UN climate change report and how devastating it is. Kelly.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kelly Bornhoft, and my studio's in San Jose, California. And actually, this piece centers the center focal point is my studio. So the Endangered Species Act is turning 50 years old this year. And the majority of my work actually looks very different than this. I work in video and sculpture and make these kind of textural pieces. And I think a lot about the animacy of the earth and how it's a moving and shaking thing to help me conceptualize what it means to be living on a warming planet, like a lot of folks here. And some of those projects take, they tell kind of dark narratives. And I wanted to look at what we have at the expense of people who worked really hard to advocate for our environment. And so I was thinking back to this 50 years that we have and looking through the species, and there's not a lot of great documentation of some of the smaller species or less known species. So I drew every species that's plant and animal, flora and fauna, that's ever been listed under the Endangered Species Act, that's within a 30-mile radius of my studio in San Jose. I drew them digitally. The images that I referenced they all came from the Creative Commons. And then the images that I've created, I've submitted back to the Creative Commons. So while there's this piece that's it's actually kinetic, you can walk up and you can sift through and move the flags back and forth. And you can look at each of the individual animals. There's and plants, and there's a map to the right side of it so you can identify them and see the person who took the original photograph. And but the actual crux of the piece is that I'm distributing these images for non-commercial purposes, like, for research and educational purposes. So these thin pieces of fabric are not hemmed, so there's the sense of fragility where they could unhem, and they all move and go, side to side. The piece in total, if you saw it in the gallery, it's about maybe 20 feet wide, and there's 64 species that are drawn. And I'm continuing to grow that, but this is every species that was ever listed within a 30-mile radius. So thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciated you had shared with me that some of these are no longer endangered, still possibly threatened, but, really positive impact of the Endangered Species Act. Robin.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much. Thanks, Renee, and for including me in the show, and thanks, Cindy, for your leadership there at the Sanchez Art Center. This piece, Rat Lines, is part of an 18-work series that I made over a period of 13 years about the Holocaust. The 18 pieces include major aspects of the crime as well as lesser known events. Also stories of heroism and resistance. The subject matter, the Holocaust, is difficult and unexpected in an art gallery setting. I'm aware of that. And it's to get people to look at the work, I try to make something very beautiful. So my goal is to make something beautiful with an interesting shape and color palette and use of text to lure the viewer close so that they're close enough to take the content in. There's always a paragraph of text which describes the event or the story or explains the piece to some degree. This piece is titled Rat Lines, and the rat lines were, in brief, the rat lines were this set of secret escape routes that high-ranking Nazis used to get out of Germany. Many Nazis left with the assistance of the Vatican. So, this is something that's not necessarily well known. It seemed important to include in my project. The work is made by cutting thousands and thousands of tiny little pieces of colored string, and I press them into a bed of wax. So the wax acts as the adhesive for the string. And that's my motivation. The process that I use is labor intensive and highly obsessive. So the subject matter and the enormity of the crime that was the Holocaust make a very powerful match. And I just, as a last comment, I make the work. I hope that my work, I know that my work supports the efforts of resistance worldwide through education and memorializing things like this. They also serve, of course, as warnings in a time of rising autocracy around the world. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Definitely a tribute to the power of art to educate. And many people have been taking photos of the wall text that has the link to more information about the story. Marie.
Hello, I have a studio in San Francisco and I'm finding all of this talk very interesting. Almost all of my fiber artwork comes out in portraits. And these portraits are of a relative or someone that I know personally, but they're all meant to represent something larger, a situation, a cause, a common experience. And many of them spring from a sad story, but I work past that personal story to a visual that I hope viewers will look at and find their own story, which could be totally different. Many people look at this piece, which is called The Deal, and they have a memory of music lessons or on whatever instrument applies to them, or others smile because of happy connections to accordion music and dance and cultural events. Several people I talked to at Sanchez were thinking of those things. Then some laugh because the instrument is tumbling down. And I like all of these responses. They're the kinds of things that I hope come from my pieces, but they're not anything like the story where this piece began. I experienced a broken childhood. Most of it was spent with a lovely couple who looked after my life. I had few encounters with my birth mother, but the accordion was a big one. She loved polkas for dancing and she wanted me to be playing the music, so she required me to take lessons. And as time went on, there was also one song that I had in my lessons called Whispering Hope, and she loved that one. So she asked me if I would play it for her funeral. But she was only 37 at the time, and I refused to promise because I was thinking her funeral is a long way off, and I'm not going to be playing this accordion once I'm an adult. So I wouldn't make a deal. But a few months later, my mother died in a car accident. And I did play Whispering Hope at the funeral, just like she asked me to. And it was such an emotional trial that I collapsed afterward, just like the accordion in this piece. And so that's what this piece is about. Like I meant for the accordion to look like a deck of cards kind of collapsing. And I'm very happy that nobody ever suspects what the real story is.
Thank you for sharing your personal story as you do so often in your work, Marie. It's really wonderful. And do you know by chance how many buttons are in this piece? That keyboard is all buttons.
I never count them. All my pieces have many. I have a son-in-law who sometimes comes and he's not busy. He'll put out a square and count how many buttons in a square on some of my pieces, but I have thousands and thousands of buttons.
Okay, thank you. Jenny.
Hi. I just want to say thank you to the Sanchez Art Center and Renee for this opportunity. I'm so inspired listening to the other artists, and from the bottom of my heart, I believe it's important to have opportunities for artists that believe in critical thinking and free expression. So that's a good thing. I am based in Richmond, California. I love Richmond. Richmond has my heart. So for over 25 years, I've been an artist, community advocate, curator, administrator, writer, instructor, you name it, everything in the arts. And I'm currently the executive founding director for a new arts organization called Arts CCC, which is Arts Contra Costa County. And advocacy as a social practice artist, that's really a strong thread in the work that I do. And yesterday, we just started our poetry series program at Juvenile Hall for system engaged youth. And so critical thinking and free expression is really important to me, and I think to probably other people here on this call. So in this work, Private Property, My Body, I like to take custom signs, or like this is a custom private property sign, and I like to alter it, repurpose it, sort of playing with its function. And so what other, people have expressed in this talk is that, we're all sort of experiencing this extreme religious doctrine and philosophy that becomes law limiting options. And, personal autonomy is under attack. And we're just sort of seeing with the news last week where access to birth control medications and medical services, we're seeing this being denied by politicians and judges that sort of, in my opinion, lack common sense or medical expertise. And overall, I sort of believe that we should control our bodies and not politicians. But, due to the many years of community advocacy I've done in my life, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful with this new generation that is active, organizing and voting, and despite everything, that provides me some hope.
Thank you, Jenny. It's, again, what a powerful selection of works, like you said, and inspiring and hope. That's all we can do right now, but your art's really helping us to do that. Great reminders. And now we have Julie.
Hi, my name's Julie Eland. Please bear with me. I'm very nervous talking in front of groups of people, even if it's just virtual. So I'm going to read my information. I do have a studio in San Francisco, and I work mostly in fused glass, but it's pretty experimental. I combine glass with other materials. And now I'm going to read my statement. My studio practice involves investigating the physical properties of materials. This exploration results in work that connects process and concept, substantiating the invisible, paradoxes, memory, mortality, and intersection of the arts and sciences are examples of predominant preoccupations and themes in my work. Like a musician, I explore these motifs repeatedly with different instruments, styles, and tonalities. And so what you're seeing here is some three pieces that are part of a series called Disquietude. The Disquietude series explores ideas related to memory and cognition. Words made of bubbles trapped between black and clear glass appear or disappear depending on light and viewing angle due to a mirror-like iridescent coating. The imagery's intermittent quality alludes to the experience of having an idea or word on the tip of your tongue, only to have it slip away. My father had dementia for the last few years of his life. Witnessing his decline and thinking about other people's cognitive challenges were the impetus for creating the series. Unlike most glass artists who see bubbles as flaws, I usually try to trap air in my pieces. A glass membrane skirting around the edge of air substantiates the invisible. The magic and whimsy of bubbles represent personal symbols. For example, beauty found in imperfection and the buzz of brain activity and hum of human thought. Thank you for listening. That's it.
Thank you. This piece keeps reminding me of me walking into a room and wondering why I went there.
Yep, that's part of it.
So I'm going to, there was a question for Dallas Frank, where they were asked, how much does your emotional state reflect in your artwork? And if anyone does have any questions, you can put it in the Q&A and we will get to them. So this one for Dallas.
Okay, sure. Yeah. As I stated before, some of my work is very heavy. So I need that break. So when I know that I need to be up, it will kind of dictate the colors that I use. And that is kind of how I begin a piece. I will begin with a color family and build upon that and move forward with it. But it is absolutely tied to the pieces that I create. So yeah, emotion has a great deal to do with it. Thank you for the question.
Great, thank you. Again, the show is up through May 21st. And the virtual galleries are up now and artist statements are available on that. If you click that little more information that's at the bottom of the screen by each artwork that we've scrolled through, you can read the artist statements in more detail. And we also have everyone's websites listed too, so that everyone can explore more about the artists in this amazing show. And as we get ready to finish up the talk, I would like to give the final word of the afternoon to our wonderful juror, Renee.
Hi again, everyone. Thank you for sharing and sharing all your work and creating all this beautiful work. And I'd like to thank again Cindy and Jerry for the opportunity. I wanted to let you all know what I was thinking when I juried the show. I think there's so many works. I thought something that I thought about, especially as we were coming out of the pandemic, is both thinking about works that were very serious in their subject matter, but also, thinking about the other powers of art other than, educating, inspiring, and exploring these very serious topics. I think a lot of the work here expresses like a lot of joy and some hope for like what the future can be and how art can play a role in that. And so all the work that I saw here, like I think unintentionally really talked about everything that's on our mind, like the environment, as well as, thinking about like our privileges and place in the world and how we can use the skills that we have and our positionality to really think about those things and talk about them and educate each other. So I wanted to thank you all again for sharing. And I hope you all have a great night, and hope if you are in the Bay Area, you visit us at ICA San Francisco. I'll be around. You'll probably see me there. I give regular curator tours. So thank you all so much, and take care.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your work, for being here to learn more about it, and look forward to seeing you through the run of the show. Have a great week ahead.